No quorum yet.
Huh?
Here we go. That's a quorum.
That's
Good.
a quorum.
We got a quorum.
Hey guys, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, good. I got a different setup tonight.
Different background.
Yeah, I'm in Florida right now, so
Wow.
trying to set up on this little hotel here, but I think I've got it figured out.
This and all our lovely weather there, AJ.
Yeah. It was a nice day down here. Sorry don't mean to rub it in.
We're getting a snowstorm this week. I don't know if you're gonna be back. but-
I think you're getting it on Friday, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thursday, Friday.
I'm supposed to travel on Friday, so I'm a little nervous about it.
might not be having a plane to travel on.
Yeah.
No gym tonight, so we need to get a temporary chair and we could start the meeting because we got us all here.
I make a motion that Susie's the temporary chair.
I make a motion that Bob Groves be the temporary chair.
Okay. Sure, I second Bob Grove's nomination.
Susie. Well, simple
I'm
matter.
fine with that. We
Okay.
don't have to vote. I won't argue.
Yeah.
That's
Okay,
3
well,
already, so let's do
I'll
it.
look at the agenda.
Yeah,
see what
that's
we.
fine.
I know the first thing we always do is the minutes, so let's convene the meeting and look at the minutes.
I think the only issue would be, do we have broadband people that are waiting or?
7 o'clock.
It's 7
No, it
o'clock.
doesn't look like it, just Jim, right?
Right.
Steve
okay.
Schmidt will be here at 7 o'clock to present the
Yeah.
budget.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
So in terms of minutes, we've got actually two things. One is we did not vote on the January 25th minutes. I emailed Kevin because I think there was a request to have him look over the portion of the minutes where we discussed kind of the assessor's budget. So he sent me a brief message saying everything looked fine. He didn't have any need for any changes. So do you think we can just vote on those then?
Yes. I make a motion, we approve those minutes.
second. All in favor?
Aye. Arvanitis, aye.
Here I.
Groves, aye.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, eye.
Mosher, aye.
Motion passes. So the second minutes, the 8th, is that the
Correct.
minutes?
Yes.
Uh,
I make a motion to approve the minutes of February 8th.
I have a couple questions, AJ.
Sure, please go ahead.
Number one, on, let's see where my notes are here. 1E, you mentioned that George asked a question about the police chief line, the budget,
Yeah, what's the answer?
and there was no answer to it.
Yeah,
So,
I thought the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
He pleaded the 5th.
yeah.
Does anybody recall if there was actually a timeline shared? Or does
No.
anybody have sort of,
Nope. I think there was no
Background
timeline shared, but I
information.
think that should be included
okay,
because it's uncertain.
yeah. Okay, there is no Timeline in place. Is that fine?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and the other question I had, on the, let's see what the number is here. It's, oh yeah, 7A. But we were talking,
Okay.
we were reporting on capital planning.
Yes.
You said in your remark that Tim said there were significant problems with the vehicle. He didn't say
Right.
that, my recollection. The only problem that he mentioned was a muffler that couldn't be replaced because parts are not available from Sterling. So other than
Okay.
that, he didn't use the word significant problems with the truck. There are none really, except that he's.
I thought there was
concerned
like a lot of rust damage to
Yeah.
their vehicle.
There
Is that
there were a number of problems.
Look, when I discussed it with him, he said, yeah, well, the body has rust and some dents, but it could be serviced possibly. But he didn't say there were significant problems with the vehicle. He said that he was mostly concerned the parts being available in the future.
I would
Um,
recommend that we do the same we did with Kevin Rudden and check with Steve on that.
Check with Tim, you mean?
Or we could watch the
Focus-
video of our meeting and look at that conversation and see what was really said about the condition of
Well,
the
the
vehicle.
conversation was at the capital planning meeting.
Which was also taped.
That's what what AJ was reporting on, and that's what's being noted here in our minutes.
Okay?
I think it's faster if we just hold this minute aside and check with Tim if he wants to make any more specifics to that or just change it.
That's fine with me. Whatever you guys want to do here. Bob, does that sound like?
It's okay.
good
I'm just saying, you and I were at the meeting, Becky,
Yeah.
you were at the meeting too, but he didn't say that there were significant problems. He said that he was concerned about, if he says it now, that's not going to change what was said at the meeting, as far as I'm
Well, we
concerned.
can
We're
watch.
talking about what's on the record, what was discussed at that meeting, so.
Yeah. I guess I'm just looking at my notes from capital planning. The one note I have about this was problems include significant rust. So what if I just put that in? Would that work for you, Bob?
Yep.
Okay. The vehicle has significant rust damage.
Well, it was more actually that he said there was some rust on the body, which is
Right.
different from the chassis.
Okay.
And I did ask him about the body and whether he thought the body could be serviced, in other words, sandblasted, welded and painted. And he said, yes, it could. Now, didn't say he wanted to do that, but he said it could be done that way. That's something he's done in the past and could be done. So his main concern was, in my recollection, that's why I brought it up, was that he said that the truck is no longer manufactured. And so it
Right.
worries him that a major part, like the rear end of the transmission, would go, and that part would not be available because that is a Sterling part. The motor
Yeah.
is a Caterpillar. The body is made by a manufacturer that still exists. As far as the muffler goes, there's many muffler shops that can build mufflers for you, but he was worried about the rear end or
Got it.
that was what he said, and those were not problematic. They're fine right now. So
Okay. So I just have, let me just propose this change and see if that works for you, just so we can save the step of having to go back to Tim. So I've changed that sentence to the chassis has significant rust and it is getting hard to locate parts as Sterling stopped making trucks in 2008.
the body, not the chassis.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Does that work?
Yeah, that works.
Okay.
I had an edit on number 2, F.
Okay.
The third sentence, George suggests that we ask the authors for we ask the
Yeah.
the actuaries for the recommendations on on options for funding the accrued the actuarial liability. So not authors, well, I guess we could leave it as authors, but recommendations, not what we should do, but recommendations for funding the actuarial liability. In other words, we want to see what he what his perspective is and what other towns are doing and what he thinks is the best way for us to get to that.
Okay.
Is the 50,000 a year, for instance, the right way? So I just want to be specific about what we should do. It's how we can fund the liability.
Okay, so I just wrote, George Aravanitis suggests that we ask the actuaries for their recommendations on the best options to fund the OPEB liability.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
That's all I had.
That's good. So we have a motion on the floor about these minutes, then we do?
I make a motion that we approve the minutes of February 8th as amended.
Second,
Let's call a vote.
Arvanitis, aye.
Chair, I.
Groves, aye.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, eye.
Mosier, aye.
So motion passes. Now, Becky, what about that computer of yours? The next thing on the agenda is the
Yeah,
budget review. So
that's right.
is it gonna blow up on you or what?
Let's hope not. I'm
Wanna
gonna
do
give
that?
it a shot. Whoops, just a second.
Whoops is not,
Yeah, that's not a good start.
I did the last time.
at least she's not a surgeon.
Oh, my God.
Whoops, says the surgeon.
Let's see. Okay, only one file opened up so far, except I can't find it. My board. Let's try that again. Come on. Screen share. Here we go. It's got to be it. Look at that.
Yep.
Very nice.
All right. So here is the revenue section of the budget to date. Excuse me. So this again is a little unusual. I've used the information straight off the DOR website for my basic information because the ceiling, the property tax ceiling numbers, they had zeros in the columns. In the FY23, so I had to use the calculation that they gave us, which is the 5,954,997, which is the total of the numbers above it. No, it's less than it is the total of the numbers above it, which is good. So we're using the full 2.5 with an estimated $10,000 in new growth. Last year, we used a $10,000 estimate and the actual came in at $18,749. Then we moved down, we had an increase in our debt exclusion from the regional capital plan. It's gone up to 37,000. Speak enough for everyone?
Yep.
I guess it is. Okay, I have made no adjustment to the excess levy capacity at this time. So I'm carrying forward from FY 22. I've made, again, the estimate on the overlay being around $40,000 until we get anything better or a final, giving us a total tax levy of $5,464,236. Which is quite a bit less than the possible full levy taxation of $5,964,000. But again, we will continue to carry excess levy capacity and possibly increase it again this year as we work through the budget. I I've just incorporated the chapter 70 figures from the governor's estimate, which are a slight increase of $3,000 for chapter 70. The charter tuition assessment reimbursement has gone up $8,000, but I believe the charter tuition cost has also gone up by about the same, so there's no real change there. The school choice receiving has declined, as I think the school choice, we'll look at that down below. Veterans benefits are minimal. They continue to be minimal this year. We have the program itself for the public libraries was 4,443 last year and declined to 4,086 in the governor's budget. And as you all remember, we have the governor's budget first, then we have the budget from the House, and then we have the Senate budget. And then they all go into conference, and by July, we usually get a final number. So it's the guessing game until then. Motor vehicle is the first of our local estimated receipts. Came in a bit higher than last year. We estimated 198,000 in FY22. We received 199,791, and our current estimate is 199,000. We had some room excise tax come in that is new for us. It's a new revenue stream. It's from the B&Bs that mostly around the lake. Penalties and interest did go up last year. So these are the figures recommended by the accountant on the recap. So they're the figures we go with. We can adjust them, but she has the ability to change them back if she doesn't like them when she does the final recap. So we have payment in lieu of taxes. The estimate is close. This year, we have room to increase it because the actual came in higher, but we really don't want to because that was a timing error. We received 2 payments in the last year from Amherst, and that's why it's more than the average. It went up about $35,000. So we don't want to increase that estimate. Department revenue was high last year. I think we need to look, I hadn't looked closely at that. We should look at that. It went up from 14,625 to 30,000. Court fines are still flat as they have been over the years. Investment income is not very active, and it's a little bit down from the prior year. Medicaid reimbursement, I'm sorry, also appears to be lower. So all in all, we've had a decline in our local estimated receipts this year. We didn't have use of free cash, and that brings us to the total revenue of $6,781,432.
Becky?
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question just to clarify? What does it mean when Amherst made 2 payments? What's behind that? What's that mean?
Amherst we have a pilot with Amherst for different properties around their reservoir that we own. I mean, that our town property. And so I think that was the first year we had a new assessor and a new treasurer, and who was supposed to write the bill was not clear. So the bill got written a month late, and then Amherst did not pay the bill into the next fiscal year.
Is that why FY21 is only 309,000 because the 336 isn't in there?
Correct.
Okay. So we had double payment last year from Amherst
The 36, excuse me.
Yes. And we had no payment the prior year
Right.
recorded.
So it shows the big jump last year
Right.
and it
Becky?
decreased this year.
Becky,
Yeah.
what, investment income, what is that and where does it come from?
Investment income is interest earned, which is typically very little of it.
Yeah,
Let me see which, is it up here? No, it's down here, isn't it?
$1,000 or something.
Yeah,
9,000, yeah.
it was
But that's
not-
just the income on all our cash balances, right?
right.
All our different funds, our free
Yeah.
cash, our
Free cash.
stabilizations and the special funds we have for construction projects like.
Yeah, I realize we don't have much, we don't have any options as to how we,
Invest.
yeah, well, that's too bad.
Yeah,
Town
but the
stuff.
good news is we do with OPEB.
Yeah.
And our OPEB investment, well, the returns on OPEB is becoming more significant every year.
Yeah.
And
Well-
returns are just low. Interest payments, interest rates are just
Yeah, really.
minuscule.
Well,
Well, that's
You know,
about
when
to
you say it's
change.
unfortunate we can't invest it in the stock market, I'm not
Eventually it'll change, yes.
necessarily going to be working out, come in the coming months, but they're supposed to be very, very, very conservative with, with the town's money, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the point is you don't want to gamble the health insurance money on a big bet and lose.
Becky, can I ask you another question about when you talked about the revenue from the state and the Cherry Street, that you said we wouldn't get the final numbers till after the fiscal year begins, more or less?
Right.
So how does that money come to us? Does it come to us at the beginning of the fiscal year? Does it come to us quarterly, or how does that work?
I think it used to be quarterly, but they have changed. Let me ask Gail. Oh, she just left. They've changed, like the chapter 70 and choice money now comes to us monthly. And I think the revenue might do the same.
I see.
They've changed him. So it's much more even distribute. We're receiving it consistently.
Thanks.
That chapter 70 number, while we're talking about it, 0.47 increase. The state is slowly and slowly stepping back from funding education, and they're forcing it on us. Year after year, it's less than 0.5% increase on that line. Yet inflation, it's just ridiculous to me that they can't come up with more chapter 70 money. They have to deal with that.
And that I know they are, George, they're pouring millions of dollars into urban areas, really more seriously low income areas.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. I do know that. That came out of that special committee.
Yeah. But they aren't, and they are holding us harmless. And when you look on our data sheets and see 100 students, this year we used to think 132 was low. So this year everything's hold harmless because of COVID and the departure of students to other areas, other situations or homeschooling.
I know hold harmless is definitely important at the regional level. Is it also kicking in at the local level for the elementary school?
I think just on the enrollment issue, the other issues, like the income and wealth is not as much an issue for Shutes, that we still are in, show need where the other towns don't as much.
Susie and then Diane wanted to speak. So Susie, go ahead.
Yeah, I felt that the governor's budget seemed conservative to me. I don't know what the game is. Does he gets to go first? Does he like to be low or high, or what his thing is? I think what the rest of this legislature might do may not show up in education aid, but it could show up in other places. And I'm not a person who has my finger on the pulse. So I think it's not worth being too worried about yet until we go a little farther into the process to see how the legislature poses against a lame duck governor.
Diane,
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Becky, can you tell me where the Wheelock Solar pilot is on the revenue sheet?
All the pilots are still. Okay, I'm going for the pilots. I have not broken out all the pilots separately as yet. The finance committee has not discussed that yet. I know you have requested for that to happen. Where's my pilots?
Page.
It's line 44 or 45.
Here we go. Yeah, 45. Okay, no, I'm sorry. I'm just getting over being sick for 4 or 5 days, so please bear with me. We didn't, okay, so this all, part of the problem with the solar pilot at this time is in their infinite wisdom, DOR made the solar come in as new growth, and it's not separated out. It's now part of our levy.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, anything that becomes productive would end up there.
But they might change it again. That's because they've had a lot of pushback. So when we had these jumps in new growth, their basis was we had, so the current pilot, Diane, is about $92,000 a year. And when it first came online, it was in FY19 and 20 and 21 in small pieces. So that's where they are, but we don't, I think we're going to have to build a separate table on the revenue sheet to show people the revenue from the solar, because the way DOR requires us to account for it, it doesn't show in the regular budgeting sheet.
Yeah, it's not possible to see it,
Correct.
which is
And
why I keep asking this question.
so we can add like an inset box that can identify that, and depending what the finance committee decides to do, and then we can, see if there's any other type of revenues that might be similar. The cell tower, I'm not sure how the accounting will go for that, but there will be a revenue stream from the cell tower once it's completed. So maybe we can think about how to have, how to show that on the revenue sheet.
I think we should cut away from the budget and let the MLP do its thing at 7 o'clock, and they're on the schedule. Is that
Great.
all right with the committee?
I'll stop sharing.
So whoever, take it away.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having us today. Let's see. Steve Schmidt was going to do a lot of the presentation, and there I see him on there. Steve, do you want to bring up the budget?
Sure. I'm looking for my share screen. Host disabled participant screen sharing.
I need to make you a co-host. I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay, does that show?
Not yet.
Nope.
Hmm.
You have to press the button after you find it. There's a screen share button on Zoom.
Let's try that.
Nope.
Becky, if you have the budget, you could put it up on the screen.
Yep, or I could also do it. I have multiple screens going. Sometimes that's easier.
Okay, Gail.
Okay, why don't you give it a try?
You got it. I'm still getting the host has disabled participant screen sharing.
Sorry, Gail.
We all
There we
received.
go.
Okay, good.
Let me make that bigger for everybody. Oh, a little bit too big. Let's go. There we go.
Okay. So I could just give a brief overview of what we're doing and why it's a little different from all the other department budgets that you'd be reviewing, because the MLP is an enterprise fund, which is this odd, unique creation of the Department of Revenue for municipal departments that generate their own revenue. So there are aspects of it that we work like a regular department. And one of those is that our budget needs to be approved by town meeting. Big area in which we differ, though, is that we generate our own revenue. So we have our proposed expenses here, but just keep in mind, none of this expense will be raised by the taxpayers. It's not a raise and appropriate account. It's a appropriate from other available funds account, or it's an enterprise fund actually is separate from those even. There is provision in enterprise fund law for the town to subsidize this, but it's nothing that we are doing. We raise all of our revenue, all the revenue needed to operate the MLP comes from the subscriber fees, and that even includes the debt payments that are made. So we have prepared a budget for FY23, and then over in the far right column, I've got the FY22 appropriations for the various line items. So I guess I would just open this now to anybody has questions or comments.
Steve?
Yeah.
Just generally, there seems to be a dramatic lowering of the total budget number. And I just was wondering if you might.
Debt service.
Yeah.
It's debt
yeah.
service, but is that the only thing it is?
That's definitely the what's driving the lowering of it, that having paid off the ban, which was the short-term borrowing that we did, which there was a $130,000 appropriation in FY22 for that. FY23, that's gone. So it's, very significant reduction in our expenses. A few other things went up, a few other things go down, but that definitely is the reason for the big reduction in the expenses.
So I guess a follow-up to that is, wouldn't the most prudent thing to be to put the difference in the emergency reserve fund, or?
Well, because we have $201,000 in retained earnings from FY21, we need $127,000 of that to make the final ban payment. But that leaves $73,000 in retained earnings from FY21 that we will ask town meeting to appropriate for our emergency reserve fund. So we will start off July 1st with $73,000 in emergency reserve, which is more than we've had in it before, and we've only spent just, very few $1,000s out of it ever. So we feel we're safe and comfortable that way.
So the overage will go, the difference between your revenue and expenses will end up again in your, your free cash. I mean, I always, what do you think?
Retained earnings.
Is that where, well, you're planning for it to go?
Let me just Will I just repeat that so I make sure I understand?
So your revenue is over 400,000. Your expenses are 346. So
No,
that,
the 400,000, that is FY22. Gail, can you stretch this taller so we can? Can you stretch the top higher and the bottom lower to?
Shrink it.
I can shrink it, sure.
No, I didn't want you to shrink it.
Yeah, I can't, I have a limit on how big my screen is vertically.
Okay.
That's as big as I can go. I can shrink it, but I can't do anything else with that. But
Okay, so
I
yeah,
can scroll back and
we'll
forth
stay at the
though.
top. If
Okay.
you stay at the top for a second, we've got most of this is FY23, but over in that column E, the far right there is FY22. I just put that up for comparison. So now scrolling down, the revenue for FY22 is projected to be 473,000. So I am expecting that we will have that our expenses this year also, FY22, will be lower than that we will have additional retained earnings. But part of the whole enterprise fund accounting system is the leftover funds in an enterprise fund start out being just like excess unexpended funds in any other town line item. On July 1st, they go into this limbo. And then in the fall, when the DOR certifies the town's free cash, they also certify the enterprise funds retained earnings. So there's a lag in when we can use that. That answers.
Yeah. I want to point out that the biggest unknown that we have in our budget is always maintenance. We're always thinking about what happens if a big storm comes through, if we have lots of unforeseen repairs. And so this 73,000 that we want to put into our retained earnings is going to help with that to our emergency reserve fund. But we also have 60,000 that will start accumulating this year in our annual maintenance fund. So we just want to make sure that we have plenty of money there. Everything else is a pretty much fixed expense. So we're hedging against any big maintenance items. Yes, we have insurance. It's a $10,000 deductible. So any big storms, that's going to cover that. But we still want to have enough in there in this just in case fund. We've had a lot of internal discussions about, well, what's enough? What is enough to put in there? And we're thinking about 10% of our total build cost is what we're going to aim for. That's about 140,000. 1.4 million is what it would cost to rebuild our network from the ground up for all the just the mainline distribution. So that's kind of where we're thinking we're headed with this of what we'll cap. And you may be wondering, well, what are you going to do with all this excess money going on? And the answer is we are going to start lowering rates this year. So your monthly internet bills are going to be lowered by at least $10 a month, which is significant. So that's what's happening with these excess funds is we're giving it back to subscribers in the form of lowered rates. We have not set that exact number yet. When we do, you as a customer will start getting notifications. You can, also reach out to us at that time if you have more kind of questions about it once we set that. I think this is probably a good time to also announce that we have been in contract negotiations and have chosen a new provider. So we will be moving away from Crocker Communications and going with Sheld. We have not made this announcement kind of public yet because our contract with an intergovernmental agreement has not been inked. But that also represents some lowered savings that we're able to provide to subscribers because of this new contract, which is going to offer better services at some lower rates. So anyway, Susie, you've had your hand up for a while. Do you have a question?
Yes, I have a couple questions. One is there's a $45,000 FY23 proposal for broadband capital stabilization, also known as electronics depreciation. And that looks like it doesn't get spent out, that's rolled over. Is that right?
Yes, that's a stabilization account similar to the town's stabilization accounts. So that does accumulate. We've been putting that $37,895 into for the past 2 years. And again, this year, we decided to increase that slightly to account for inflation because we calculated back when the network first started, the total amount we thought we would need to, this is to replace the electronics in the hut and electronics in households, which have a, you figure how long is a computer good for, you figure it that way. Well, 5 years, 7 years in that range that we'd need to replace these electronics. And since the calculation we came up with for that, we made some years back, we decided we should bump that up a bit for account for inflation.
Yeah.
And another question I had is on the salary, it's doubled, about doubled. And what's the story on that?
Okay. We, in negotiating with Gail as our general manager, we realized that has been that salary has been significantly under paid since the beginning. Was undercompensated regards both to the time required and the level of responsibility for the job. And so the increase will just bring it in line with the position's actual time demands and the level of professional responsibility. Gail's been spending about average of 28 hours a month in her role as MLP manager. Starting next year, we're shifting the day-to-day financial operations from one of the volunteer board members, me, to the MLP manager. And so we calculate that with those additional financial responsibilities, job will run about 30 to 35 hours a month. But the important thing to think about here is, in addition to the time commitment and the individual tasks involved, the position has a very high level of responsibility. Managers responsible, 24/7, 365 to keep that network up and running. Whenever a problem comes up, it's Gail people call. And she works very closely with the internet service provider, the network operator, to both proactively to keep things running well as when there's a problem. She's very much involved in getting things back running again. We also looked at how other towns compensate their MLP management. We've got more details on it I could provide, but I think the most significant one is when we first started running the network, we contacted Holyoke Gas and Electric to see if they would be interested in managing our network, and they quoted us $36,000 a year for 20 hours a month worth of work, and that didn't include the financial tasks. So that's kind of a summary of what's involved there.
Yeah, looks like Bob and George have hands raised. Bob, why don't you go first?
Yeah, hi, thanks. First of all, I want to congratulate you. I like the way your budget looks, and I think the numbers look great, and I'm happy to hear that you're going to be reducing our monthly vig. So good, thank you. But so at the bottom of the thing, it says $38 per month per prescriber. That obviously doesn't include the contract with Crocker or whoever will be replacing him. So that,
Right.
when I first saw that, I was a little taken aback, but now that I understand it, that's what it means, to be clear, right?
Yeah,
Correct.
that is the MLP fee portion of the total subscriber bill, which currently is $52 a month. The 38 where it's, we're working on right now, because we're still negotiating our backhaul charges. We're still working on the intergovernmental agreement with the new ISP and network operator. That figure could change slightly, but it's definitely be a significant reduction.
Looking good, thank you.
George?
I just want to mention to everyone that the MLP did approach, or we received from Becky, information about the manager position, and we're going to be reviewing it next Monday at our personnel board meeting. And the information we got was very detailed. A lot of what Steve had already covered, but very detailed. So we're definitely going to be looking at it next week as well.
Okay.
Certainly, let us know if you have any other questions or concerns about that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Well,
Any other
Is that-
questions?
I think that's. you did a
Oh,
great
Susie's
job.
got
Thank
one.
I know that there'd been a lot of work on pole rentals. And I see that 2,454 have been spent, but the budget is staying steady at 20,000 roughly. What's that about? That the cost this year so far is very low, but the budget is really like not 10 times more, but
Susie,
a lot more.
shh, quiet. There is a major utility that has not sent us a bill. We know it's in the contract that we're on the hook for it. So we got to put it in the budget, but so far since we've been up and running, they've never sent us the bill.
Is that the same utility that won't move the pole down at the dam so we can do the culvert?
Why,
The
yes, it
poll
is,
was
George.
today.
Um,
I have to let you all know, the poll was moved today. Well, it wasn't moved. They've started the work, but I'm sure they didn't communicate to anybody they should have. And I heard from the
I can talk to that. Today, the power went out here for about 20 minutes, and that is when National Grid cut the line for the western part of Lake Wyola, which has been served from Orange, and now we are receiving Pratt Corner Road power for the first time as of 9 a.m. this morning. So they've started, and that was a big deal because that was what held everything up last year. So they've done, the next thing they're going to do is to move the pole, which will probably take place within a month or so, I would guess, having done this first big step. It doesn't seem like much, but actually this was one of the most difficult parts of the whole deal with National Grid. So they are sort of getting around to doing things. And there you have it.
This looks great.
So you're all done.
Yeah, any other questions or concerns about our budget here before we sign off? All right, if anything else comes up, let us know. And, thank you all for your continued support. And I hope you enjoy your lowered bills coming soon, sometime this summer.
Awesome.
That's something you never hear. Yeah.
Big time, big time.
So,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
all right, everyone. Bye-bye.
Hi, thank you.
Can we get that off the screen?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I need to stop sharing. There we go.
Thank you. All
All
right,
right, bye-bye.
good. All right. So the next agenda item is the 4 town meeting recap.
Well, we were still on the budget.
Should we
Oh,
go-
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay, we're going back to that. Sorry.
Oh, my goodness.
Uh-oh.
Here we go.
Here we go.
There we go. Okay, are we still on the revenue side?
I had a question about the excise tax when you can pull
Okay,
it up.
so yes.
Although we
are.
don't need to look at it. I was just thinking, car prices have skyrocketed. And if people are buying new cars, and I don't know how they calculate the excise tax if they use current market value. But I'm thinking excise taxes could be a lot higher next year on automobiles.
Let's hope not.
Well, look at the value of cars. Look at how much it costs. I saw an article today. 50% of the cars that show up at dealerships are already sold.
I get an email every week from the guy who sold me a truck wants to buy it back. Or more.
For more, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's going on. So I'm seeing our excise estimate could probably be higher.
Well, George, remember that the excise tax starts at year 1 and at year 5, it's flat from there on in, from what I understand. So the excise tax on my old Toyota Corolla, which or my pickup, which dates to 1990, hasn't changed since I bought it in 1992 or 93. So those of us who own older cars, I don't think will be supporting this this excise tax all that much. But new cars, that's a different story. The
So that's what I'm
assessments,
thinking. I'm thinking in terms
Yeah.
of new cars.
yeah.
And I'm just looking for more revenue, I'm looking for an
Yeah.
excuse for using a higher estimate. And I think that's a potentially low line.
Wonder.
Well, Gail knows better than the rest of us. Or is it Gabe? I'm sorry. I'm still getting treasurer.
No, it's Gail. Gabe is in
Always confuse
orange.
those two. Okay.
So that's a possibility, but I don't know if it's one you want to,
Well, I'd like her to think about it, that's all, and look at what's going on if she could I don't know if she has any kind of vision into what's going on with car purchases now. And
well, Ellen is the one who handles all the billings and that go out for excise. So she knows what she's, the volume that she's sending out, but the last one usually comes in May. So again, it's really hard to predict these things too far out.
Understood. I just wanted to throw that out there. Can I ask a real quick question? Did the select board decide when ATM is going to be?
They will do that tomorrow night. The week that we're looking at is May 21st, the Saturday, the third Saturday. The concern is that the weather at the end of April might still be chilly to be sitting outside.
Not a good week for a baseball game.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be much baseball this spring.
No, right.
Susie has her hand up.
On line 45, the pilot that is 335K, what pieces are that if it's not any of the Wheelock project?
Okay, the majority of it is Quabbin. I think almost 300,000 is Quabbin, and then we have all the Amherst, and then we have the smaller Tenemos, Sirius, and who am I forgetting?
The state.
Yeah,
State
the beach,
And
Lake Wyola.
wasn't there a discussion about changing the value of state-owned land in terms of for towns?
The
That's it.
Quabbin, yeah, that's different than the Quabbin. The Quabbin is treated differently, and the bulk of our money comes from the Quabbin.
Lucky us. Okay.
But the assessment on all of that Quabbin land went up along with Chapter 61 money as well, I think by the same amount, wasn't it,
And I think that happened,
last year.
last year?
yeah. Well, 2 years ago. Where's,
Couldn't have been very much.
It was pretty significant.
Well, just looking at the numbers, so,
Not reflected in these numbers if it is.
right, because last year we had a bump from Amherst.
18 or the year before? I think it's been a few years, Jim. And
Yeah.
it went up, I think, like 15,000.
Well, it just started showing up this year on at least my tax bill and others who have Chapter 61 land. I can't remember, it was like, it went from $3 or $4 up to 15 bucks per acre. I mean, it was a significant jump. But maybe the state has a different way of calculating it for their, for the land that they own. I don't know.
Yep. Well, they don't own the Quabbin. We do. That's why they pay us. But anything they have to pay, I'm sure the rules aren't the same.
We don't derive any income from the Shutesbury Town Forest, do we?
No, I
Can't
don't.
tax yourself.
believe-
Can't tax yourself, I don't think.
Yeah.
Well, it's state land,
Well,
but it's
yeah,
state land.
It's sort of under the same umbrella. I'm not sure. It's just listed on maps as, as the Shutesbury Town Forest, but does that mean that Shutesbury actually owns that land and can?
I believe, Jim, when I looked into it, about 20 years ago, a long time ago, that area was, I think, became DCR property.
Yeah.
And DCR,
Oh, so it's just entitled. It isn't, and in reality, it's not ours at all.
right.
Yeah.
Right,
it
but-
figures.
But it's in our town and it's owned by the
It is.
state.
Yes,
So to me, we
We
should be
should-
getting money for it. Is that something
Absolutely.
the
And I
assessor
believe
can
they
follow
are
up on?
through the DCR assessment. I mean, the pilot we get,
So that's in this number. That's in the 336.
which is,
I-
yeah, because I think that
part-
happened close to 30 years ago. It's been a long, long time.
I mean, pilot money is another area where I would say the same thing I said about Chapter 70. I mean, why is it flat year over year? Nothing is flat year over year. Everything goes up, and yet the state just doesn't want to continue to keep up their commitments.
Well,
Yeah.
the state determines the value of its own land.
Yeah,
what
that's a
that's
good
what
deal.
Kevin said,
Can I
yeah.
do that?
No, you can't, but you're not the state.
And they have made changes. It's a hugely slow process, but there has been changes that just doesn't fluctuate as fast as our own property value.
And there are lawmakers in Western Mass, and there are selectmen and select board members and other people in Western Mass who have been banging the drum about this out in Boston, saying that the pilot monies in the western part of the state are just not up to the value of all the property in the western part of the state. So hopefully, somebody will hear that, react to it.
Are we ready to go on to
Just-
expenses?
I'll just say one brief thing before we do, if you don't mind. It's just, that is on the school money, the Chapter 70 money. Somebody made a point, I think it was Becky, I want to just reinforce and reiterate that one of the main drivers for our flatness in our Chapter 70 is our declining enrollment, which is, a serious factor because Chapter 70 money is based on enrollment. It's also based on some other demographic and financials, but enrollment is a big driver for how much Chapter 70 money you get. So if your enrollment goes down from 200 to under 100, you don't get Chapter 70 money for your I don't believe, maybe Becky can
No.
correct me, but I don't think you get chapter 70 money for your choice students.
But the hold
Get-
harmless
get-
is about decline in enrollments not hitting that figure, revenue figure.
Well, they'll hold you safe from declining your chapter 70, but they won't increase it if your enrollment goes down. They just will protect you from making it go lower. And that's what's happening with Amherst. Their enrollment has gone down significantly, and yet their chapter 70 money hasn't gone down in a way that would be consonant with that enrollment because they've been held harmless. Now, that's good for our region. That's good for the town of Amherst. It's may even be good for Shutesbury. But when we complain about how chapter 70 money is flat, we have to be aware that the enrollment numbers would actually militate towards us. Even if chapter 70 money per student goes up, could be losing funding.
No question.
And the whole hold harmless is under heavy scrutiny and they are trying to throw it out.
You
Right.
know, that makes no sense. There's no way towns, if they threw that out in Amherst, they can't, that's not reasonable.
There's a lot of pressure from the eastern part of the state,
Yeah,
a
I
lot of
know.
pressure from highly populated towns in the eastern
Oh, I
part. of the
know, I'm aware. Yeah, I've been reading about it. I know.
But here we are, and they are holding it harmless for FY '23 so far, so we can move that along.
Yep. Okay, thanks.
Becky, can you just clarify one thing? Did you say the enrollment is down to 100 students at the elementary school?
That was the figure on the DOR chapter 70 calculation worksheet. Yeah.
Because, all right, that's kind of an alarming number. I didn't realize that. I mean, that's probably like 15 to 20 students fewer than last few years, right?
Or 30. Yeah.
Low.
Wow.
But one
35.
of the things that's been going on is there's many more homeschoolers because of the COVID
Mhm.
situation, and
Yeah.
many of the school committee meetings that I attend, they have to approve a homeschool plan. So we'll see what happens. They also voted on the masking policy for going forward, and there are some parents that are concerned about some of the decisions are made there. So, you know, there could be more changes in the population ahead.
Well, Susie, on that, can I also ask, do they have projections of what enrollments will be? And do you also know what the enrollments are in the early years, preschool, K and 1? Because it seems to me there's a lot of people moving in town with children.
Right.
And-
Go ahead.
Thank you, Bob. I just would like to throw out here that the town clerk's number for this year, the Shutesbury births in 2022, I think it was 23 births in town, which is amazing. Susie, how does that compare to prior years?
It was mostly like 12, 13 max.
23, I believe it turned out to be for this year. So things could keep changing.
But I think with COVID, it's really hard for them to project. They can look at the birth population, but the feelings about being in public school have not settled out yet.
But many of these births were first-time parents, which leaves potential that, you know, they're just starting families. Many of the people just around the top of the hill, the young people that have moved in, you know, just had their first child, and some are having their second child. So we are seeing the change from the baby boomers moving out, young people moving in and having children.
So should we move away from the revenue onto the next phase here?
Here you go. Can everybody see it okay?
Yep.
All right. So new column FY '23 with the actuals put in for FY '21. We still see our FY '22 budget reflected, our current year that we're in. The difference column obviously has some issues. My apologies. I think it's comparing still from the actual to the FY '22 budget, so that needs to be corrected. The figures in red are, I've redone the payroll sheet for all the salaries, so we can calculate the cost difference much more quickly now on a different sheet. And those numbers are all in red right now. I've put in the elementary school budget and some of the other budgets, but not every budget has been updated. And I will for the next time, I was kind of reluctant to put in the new regional assessment figure. I didn't want to jinx it.
So you've got last year's
Yes.
as a placeholder? Okay.
Yes, so I'm using last year's as a placeholder. And all the salaries are the same as last year at this point. Whereas, okay. So I didn't copy it all. Oh boy. I'm sorry, I have to go add that last sheet in. Okay, so my plan is I will be, sorry. I will get in all the final budgets that we have. Next time, I think it'll be all right to do the assessment. They hopefully will have voted by, no, will they? Well, it'll depend. I'll just put it in for next time, the regional assessment. We are currently showing a lot of, you know, we have about 90,000 in excess at this point without the regional assessment in, but we don't have any new information yet on the hauling, which is the big concern right now. Let me just go back down. The hauling contract, the hauling bid went out on the 16th and is due back on the 10th of March. So at that point, we should have a sense of how much damage that might cost. At this point, I believe I put in a $90,000 $90,000 as an estimate for the hauling. That's at about 72 now. It could come in at 150. We don't know. 1 second. Okay, so if we go down to the bottom. Oh my.
We don't have to pay those bills, that's right.
Okay, everybody after public service, oh my God. Bob, did you want to talk about something while I sort out my problem here?
I just wanted to ask you a question. Now, you said that there was $9,000 extra in the budget. Does that mean we're $9,000 over now or
90,
90,000 over?
Yeah.
Before we put the pay.
Or revenue. Yeah.
right.
Oh,
But there's
or
salaries.
revenue.
Yeah, we have more revenue
Okay,
than,
fine, I just
so,
want to understand that.
yeah, so we
So-
could either increase our excess levy capacity to some extent. It depends what else comes in.
Well,
It doesn't have salary.
doesn't have
increases.
salaries in it. It doesn't have the trash hauling contract in it.
Right.
So,
Correct.
yeah.
So that could use up the bulk
There's
of
some
it.
sort of serious, significant things coming along, right? So,
Yes,
which are unknown.
correct. Now, why doesn't that? I'm just gonna put this away.
Maybe we can talk about the regional meeting, regional school meeting while Becky's bringing up the rest of the sheets.
That
Pages.
sounds like a good idea. Do you have anything to say?
I thought it went well, and we need going to be thinking about who will do the summer work.
I have a problem with, I want to talk to AJ about, when you made a statement that
Sure.
that we, the town of Shutesbury, agreed with the proposed draft that they came up with at that meeting. I felt that there was some room there for us to push back a little bit on it. And, that was my personal view. And that, when we had talked, when we had seen the tape of the other meeting that you shared with us, they had talked about possibly 5% guardrails or more, 5.5. And they said, this is just a number we're throwing out there. We want to discuss it with everyone. And then they came up with their draft with 4%. And there was a big difference in value for the town. And I didn't think that we should have made a statement that we accepted it. I don't know if that's a done deal or what. But you
Well,
were-
I mean, I guess my my comment was that the proposal that they shared accomplished two goals for our town, right? And one was moving us towards a permanent assessment method that our town sees as the most equitable, fair assessment method, which is the 100% modified statutory. And I said the second goal that it accomplishes is that it's getting us, I think, quickly to a quote unquote permanent method. So that's another benefit to our town, is that we want to see a solution, a long-term solution. And so that was my comment. I said that I thought we could live with the guardrail concept because I thought we had discussed it at our previous meeting, and that we felt like as a concept, it was something that we could live with because it was really only an issue for this current year, when we're going to be moving quite dramatically from 65% modified statutory to 100% modified statutory, and that it should not be a significant issue for the town beyond FY 23, which I think is the case. So that's what, I mean, I hear your feedback, Bob, but I mean, just to give you context, I mean, that's what I spoke to. So yeah, I'm curious what others think.
That would be me. My hand's up.
Okay, go.
Yeah, so I think I was totally okay with what AJ said. If you look at the numbers that they presented, we had wrote a letter that said we'd be satisfied with 85% for the next 2 fiscal years. What we got is 100%. The 4% limit makes it only 93%, 92, 93%. So we're well above the 85 that we had told them that we were asking for, and we'll be at 100% next year. And I'm okay with that $40,000 waiting a year because we're ahead. And that 40,000 is going to give us a nice buffer next year. As far as the guardrails go, like you said, Bob, I don't think the guardrails are going to kick in very frequently. And they will. When I was on the committee, one of the committees, we actually looked at the guardrail concept. And we went back 5 or 6 years, I'm not sure exactly how far, and the finance director at the region, using different levels, we just found that there wasn't that often that different towns were impacted. So as you said, it's probably not going to happen very often. I would personally suggest in the guardrails that towns that have decreases should have a smaller percentage. Nobody should get a 60,000 decrease like we're getting. I think it's fine for us now because we're getting to the right method, but once we're at the right method, I think the towns get really hurt if their budget goes up too high. So 4 or 5% makes sense there, but I think and we're fortunate because this is all going to pass by the time they put guardrails in, and we'll be at our 100%. It won't be a problem for us, but I would recommend a lower guardrail for anybody who's getting a decrease in their budget. That'll help the towns that have big increases not have to suffer as much. But in context, back to your question or your point about AJ, I think his comment was perfectly fine because we're doing much better the long run, of course, but in this year and next year, we're doing way better than what we actually told them we wanted, and that we as a committee approved. Short story long, sorry.
So Jim had his hand up.
Yes, if this does go through as they indicated it might, the 4% guardrail, which is the number I heard thrown around, is this? It seems to me we lose a lot of the benefit we would have gained had we not stayed at like 65 or 85%. I haven't run the numbers yet on this, George, but you mentioned it's equivalent to 93% or something like that. Could you go over that once again?
Yeah, it looks like it's 92%. I'd have to go back and look. I haven't looked at it since the meeting, Jim. But if you look at what our assessment will be next year, from what they showed with the 4%, it's a lower assessment than it would have been at the 85% method. So we definitely made out on the deal. We're definitely getting a lower assessment than we would have if we got what we actually asked for. And you can see that just by looking at the numbers.
But with the 4% limit, doesn't that cut off a lot of what we would have otherwise gotten had no guardrail?
I've got it.
Raise it to the next year. We'll still get it.
But we're still getting more.
No, but even in this year, we are doing better than with this proposal than any of us were, I think, expecting us to happen. And, again, we had all collectively acknowledged that we might have to compromise at 85%. It turns out we're doing better than that. I felt like it was very important for that at that meeting for there to be kind of unanimous consensus in moving towards this plan, because it is such a good outcome for us. I mean, I'm still sort of shocked that it's happening as quickly as it is. I think it's terrific news, and I just felt like it was very important for us to endorse the plan, because it does so much of what we've been asking them to do.
So, yeah, I agree with that 100%. But back to the question. So, our assessment with the 4% guardrail is 1,547,000. In the previous meeting, at 85%, it would have been 1,567,000. So what did I say? 567, 547. So there's $20,000 less of an assessment than if they had just done what we asked. So we definitely made out on the deal, and then we're at 100% next year. And I'm happy. I don't mind the 4% because of that. And next year we're going to get another drop in our assessment. Even if the budget goes up in a big way, the town of Shutesbury is definitely going to benefit because we'll be at the 100%. And the 4% isn't going to stop us next year, because 4% is 60,000 this year, and next year it would be 40. So it would fall even at 3%, we'd be okay.
I brought the issue up not because I thought it's going to change anything, because what it is what it is, and I'm not expecting us we can. I didn't crunch the numbers, but I'm pleased to see that the numbers work the way that you described them. My point is really that we didn't have a meeting to accept. We didn't discuss this. We couldn't AJ, all due respect, you couldn't speak for the town on this. That was my objection, not that you were wrong, not that it's not the best thing for the town, but that there was school committee and select board and finance committee.
I don't know what to tell you, Bob. This was the last meeting that this topic was going to be discussed with all the 4 towns. I sat there and listened to the superintendent and finance director present a proposal that was such a good outcome for our town, and they were seeking input from representatives. It was going to be the last opportunity to do that, and I felt like it was important for them to hear a kind of unanimous consensus that this is a good direction for them to be moving. And so that's why there was no opportunity for us to say, we'll get back to you on what Shutesbury thinks about this proposal.
I take your point, AJ, and I hope you take mine.
Yeah.
But the other thing I want to just mention is I don't think that we're going to be able to implement a fair and decent and acceptable guardrail program in the future because there's so many variables. Like, for example, our enrollment went down this year too, I believe. Isn't that so, Becky? And Pelham's enrollment went up significantly, which creates, which is why we have the 5-year rolling average. So part of what's going to drive our assessment is our enrollment, and that is somewhat unpredictable. And there's going to be a smoothing effect from the 5-year rolling average, but it doesn't alter the fact that if you have a higher enrollment, you're going to pay more. That's just the way it works. That's the way it should work. But
Susie
the
had her
guardrail,
hand up, Bob, for a while. Sorry.
pardon me?
Susie's had her hand up for a while.
Oh, sorry, Susie. I didn't see that.
Yeah. So there's a couple of pieces. One, the way I heard the last sentence the last sentences at that meeting, which isn't this regional school committee's decision meeting that's coming in March. What I heard is that they wanted to go to a 4% guardrail for FY23, especially because Pelham was going to get hit quite a bit by moving to this mode, and that they wanted a committee to work on it this summer. That committee will listen and think about the issues just as the one that George did many years ago. It'll be coming up again. We'll have somebody there to talk about it. The goal that the regional school assessment is looking for is a way of keeping it as smooth as possible. And, the final guardrails are not designed yet. But by making the choices that we had in front of us, and I'm glad Shutesbury had a voice of support, because any one of those towns could have bucked at it again, but there was a sense that we were all moving in the same direction, which hasn't happened for so long. And that it moves towards a working period where the 4 towns will work together and hear each other to come up with a process that will continue to safeguard some of the changes ahead.
Susie, are you confident that this 100% statutory is going to stick, or are you certain that this is it at this point?
That's what I heard, and I heard it from the members of the regional school committee, and I don't see any of them being outliers, and they're the deciders. So I believe we are at 100% with the 5-year rolling average, with the adjustment guardrails for this FY23 and the plan to work on it this summer. That's what I heard.
Okay.
Bob, may I speak?
Anything else? Yeah, go ahead, George.
Yeah, remember, there is a wild card in all this, and that is the region was able to achieve this year by using ARPA money. That's not going to, I don't think that's going to be there next year. So there are some challenges to follow through on this and make it permanent. The fact that there was so much support, or should I say so little resistance at the regional meeting, is very encouraging. But the whole Amherst contingent wasn't there either, by the way. But I also want to say that as far as the guardrail goes, I agree with with what Susie said. We have to go through the process and at least look at it. It's allowing them to do the analysis and being open-minded about looking at it is the least of the concessions that we could give to the superintendent. It's his idea and the regional school committee.
Great. Anything else on that meeting? Is there any?
Yeah, I do want to say that the ESSER funds, I believe, are 2 years. And that Amherst has, or the superintendent's office has in mind that when the 6th grade moves, which will happen at the end of those 2 years, it too will help the budget. So it wasn't only a one-time funding mechanism. It looked like it would help them limp forward to getting to a more stable place.
Susie, please clarify. The 6th grade from Amherst moves into the regional school. They
Yeah.
rent space from the schools. That's going to support the budget to some degree. Is that what it is?
I'm
'Cause
not
they're not gonna
sure.
become partner.
It
They're not-
also lowers, maybe it lowers, I don't know how it works. I don't.
I think so, because they're not, just to be clear, they're not going to be students in the high school or the junior high. They're going to be renting space from the region for the 6th grade.
So I can say that the superintendent did raise that issue as one of the sort of positive factors moving forward that would make the 100% modified statutory method, or moving to that, sort of easier to accomplish in years forward. So I think it is a factor that that will play in this, yeah, that they're aware of.
George.
Yeah, 2 other things. One thing I meant to mention before, and one other thing pops into my mind. The good thing about, the reason the regional assessment committee really wants to, the regional school committee really wants to go to this method is so that we stop talking about methods year over year, because it's been such a distractor. And in my mind, it's a great opportunity going forward for us to look more closely at the budget. And I hope that we can spend some of that time that we were kicking the assessment issue around, we can start looking more closely at the budget. When I looked at the taxes that the towns pay in this valley relative to the state, they just published it. We all got that notification the other day, the state report. And I was looking at it, and 4 of the 10 highest towns in this valley have the same regional school system. And it seems to me that there's some work that can be done on that budget. And I'm hoping that we, as our committees, can look more closely at the budget and ask more detailed questions, because we've been ignoring those. We haven't really been focusing on the regional budget. The other thing I wanted to mention that went on at this meeting that we haven't talked about yet was the capital side of it and what it's going to mean to fund that track. And when I look at that, and I think in terms of our capital project, I hope the capital planning committee is looking at that, because that is going to impact our ability to fund a lot of other things in the future. And, I think it's something we need to do an analysis on and get our heads wrapped around now, because when that thing comes, it was good to hear everybody say the same thing. We can't afford the best plan, but you don't want to cut corners and go with the last plan, the cheap plan either. So just something for us to think about.
I just want to reinforce what you said on the first point there. I think that part of our job is to review the budget, and the other part is the assessment method. The assessment method has been taking up all the energy and all the time. And the budget has just been something we just a priori say, look, we all support the budget. But nobody examines the budget. So it'd be good to be able to do due diligence on the budget and to examine it and not be arguing and discussing the assessment method. So I welcome that too.
I don't think that I can say I didn't examine the budget, and I've been listening to them and watching how charter schools are competing with a public school. Not only are they competing, they're taking the money out of the public schools. So I feel like they have given some very clear indicators of why they need to sustain a budget that will not put the regional school into a death spiral with kids going off into charter schools, which will double whammy us.
That is a good point.
The balancing act.
Is there anything else on the 4-town meeting that anybody wants to talk about or point out? Okay.
Becky does.
Becky,
I just wanted to say I really miss having it in person and having coffee. Hopefully next year.
yeah, well, if we had it been in person, we could have caucused, exactly, which was really unfortunate, I think, you know.
I also want to gloat a little and say that we worked our butts off to get to this point, and we got what we've been asking for. And the town of Shutesbury went about this the right way. I know it didn't come as fast as we would like, but I think we did a pretty good job as a town. We were united as a group. We tried to work with the region. A lot of people in that region, even though in those meetings it doesn't feel like it, a lot of people in that region do appreciate the work that we did and the way we presented ourselves in this whole issue. And I think for me personally, being involved in this from the beginning, there was a lot of satisfaction. If this thing really holds, I'm going to just feel great about where we are. So, and I think all of us should. It wasn't an easy road for us.
Is there an icon for us to pat each other on the back? I think the next item was the actuarial method, if you want to move on to that. I don't know if there's anything, if we have anything on that.
Well,
George,
Becky,
I guess we need to plan, we still don't have the report. Ryan's, I'll bug him again to see if we can get an update.
as far as the expense side of the budget goes, we'll wait till our next meeting when Becky gets more information in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we're
Are you
moving
gonna
on,
send-
it looks like.
Are you going to send us a draft, Becky?
Yep.
Great.
Do we have
Can I
any
ask-
idea how many companies will bid on the hauling? Do we know what's out there?
Yeah, they did pre-interviews with, they lobbied 4 companies. 2 showed up for interviews. They were really concerned there wouldn't be any bids, but Casella, a firm, sorry, called Casella, is very interested. And then when I put the bid out on Combis, it went to over, I think 123 vendors from around, but a hauler needs to be local. So we're not hoping to get responses from anybody in Boston, but it'll give another, Waste Management and others that operate locally a chance to know that it's out there, and hopefully we'll get more than the 2 bids.
Do we have a sense, like statewide or nationally, how hauling companies are doing? We know that some have merged, but are they like seeing it as a lucrative business still?
I think there was concern with, I think it's still lucrative if you're savvy, but like I told you, I think last time, all the vendors that we've had in the past have been bought up. All of them. The 3 that we've had in the last 20 years have been, are now gone. And only the larger, more national, regional or national are locally available, except for like a Jelinas. And, but I don't think he has the resources to do the town.
Hey, Jay or George are both hands up.
Yeah, oh, sorry, Becky, I just had
Oh,
a
go
quick favor
ahead,
to
Jay,
ask.
yeah.
When you send out that updated expense budget, could you include a percent increase column?
Yeah.
So, in addition to just the
Yeah,
the
they'll be
actual
between
numerical
FY
increase.
22 and FY 23, the proposed,
Great, thanks.
and the dollars.
And I just want to mention to everybody that it's the Finance Committee's responsibility to put together the COLA for the salary increases next year. And I made that calculation. I took the policy that we wrote last year, and I had the model that we used to make the calculation. So I doctored it up. I didn't doctor it up, but I refined it so that we can use it year over year. I went to, not like that. And so I went to the Fed website. I was able to get the tables through January of 2022 for the CPI index that we've decided to use. And the increase from 2021 to 2022 is 6.59%. For our policy, we would use 4% because that's the max. And so the increase comes out to 2.42% for pay increases for many or most of the employees. And that's one of the things, I bring it up now because I want everybody to be aware. And I don't know if you wanted to actually look at the calculation, but for our meeting on Tuesday with the select board, it's going to be part, a big part of the conversation. So the number is 2.42%.
George? Question on that?
Yes,
That's using the formula that we talked about last year, where you had 3-year average?
that's correct.
Okay,
There's 3 years. In fact, I can just tell you real quick. There's 3 years, and year 1 is 2.25%, year 2 is 0.61%, year
Yeah.
3 is 6.59. That comes out to an average 3.15. However, when we use Shutesbury's policy with the guardrails, 2.25, 1, and 4, and that averages to 2.42 over the last 3 years.
great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the expense report. I think you sent it out not too long ago.
Would you like me to put that up? Or
Yeah,
does
see if you
everyone
can.
have it?
Let's see, I've got mine, February 15th. Do people want the expense report put up? Do you have it on your screen?
I've got it on mine, but
I already have it, yeah.
I've got it too. Anything you want to point out off the top, Becky, that's notable?
It looks like the health insurance is doing better than they thought it would.
Yeah.
Looking first, looks like we were a bit off on the health district, but I've been talking to Gabe about the county health agent's salary. She was the one doing that work, but it hasn't been
Yeah.
taken. So I'm just confirming with her who is doing the work, because I'm a little nervous it's not getting done.
Yeah,
But if they're handling it within the district, we'll be able to offset the 7780 from that health agent salary, the finance piece, the $1,978. So I'm following up on that. Does anybody else have any questions?
I have a couple questions, and because I can't understand on page 4, what line 963 and 64, general fund, transfer to capital project fund. Are those from town meeting articles that,
Yes, they are.
okay.
I'm sorry, I had, at one of the meetings, I detailed
Yes.
which ones, but
Right, and transfer to trust fund, is that a similar action or?
yeah, yes, it's also what we do at town meeting, like the OPEP is the trust fund.
Yeah,
So the
okay.
50,000 is part of that total.
All right,
Um,
that's
And
all.
then we had a lot of moving dollars between stabilization fund, capital stabilization.
Right,
and
right.
cash.
I recall
That's
that. Yeah.
why the magnitude of that is the combination of all those transfers that we did last year.
So that means on page 14, the balances for capital stabilization and stabilization are now reflecting all of the changes. It's quite a
Yes.
change there.
Yes.
Yep, okay.
While I'm thinking of it, Becky, if you're going to follow up with Ryan about the actuarial report, could you also remind him that we did want to hear from the actuary if they had some ideas, or ways that we could fund it?
Yep.
Thank you.
And I think that's one of the items is OPEP's on page 4. Page 4, no.
Balance
But I
is
was-
806, says so.
What line number is that?
That's page 14. It shows the balance of the fund, 8069.
8069. I just wanted to point out that had a huge amount of interest come in this year,
Right.
which is, that's pretty staggering.
Right?
And when we get to a certain number, the interest goes up quite a bit. I remember that in the
Yeah.
That
report.
was $1 million.
Yeah,
But
Yeah.
where is he getting that kind of interest?
There's some that it's more diversified. I'll find out for you.
Yeah, I'd like to
And
know.
that's invested in municipal bonds and all kinds of things like that that do produce quite a bit more income
Yeah,
than the pathetic amount that the bank is giving us and other towns as well.
yeah, the money market, like 1.1.
Oh, I don't think it's even money market. It's
Yeah, it's
way down
terrible.
there. It's just
Yeah.
terrible.
0.2%.
Yeah.
Remember when we were kids and you could get 5% at the local savings bank?
Yeah.
God, I'd kill for that.
Yeah, you still had to go to get a mortgage, you had to pay 9 though, or 7 maybe.
Yeah, but we got to pay I had to pay a 13% mortgage, my first mortgage.
Yeah, I
Wow.
remember that.
It's coming back.
Yeah, I do
not
remember
that
that.
fast.
We got to pay that and then not make any money on interest.
Mhm.
That's called a good spread from the banker's standpoint.
It certainly is. So I'm not seeing anything really shocking here. The reserve fund is at 40,000. I guess that's something to be, careful about, I guess. But hopefully that should be more than enough this year. I know, highway, snow and the snow materials and wages are really getting hit hard, which they weren't last year. So that's on page 3. Snow expenses, we've already used.
It doesn't look bad, Becky.
No, we haven't had any snow. We've had plenty of ice, but
Plenty of ice. But if we get through another month, we should be okay.
We
Let's
might
hope.
make it through.
let's hope.
Yeah,
Because February is
rain-
the heavier month. So, we're way past the half year, but we're not halfway through we're not all the way through the season.
Yeah. And all
Yeah.
the storms have occurred on weekends as well, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
yeah, I like the Wednesday storms better, except for,
Yeah.
So do the workers.
Yes.
but this could, it's not just the snow anymore. The rain on the dirt roads is a nightmare, and that's where a lot of our materials and time have been going this year because we
Mhm.
haven't had that much snow.
And the warm weather. Our spring mud seasons are just longer than they used to be.
Yeah. Well, this up and down in temperature is playing havoc with potholes in the roads too. I mean, just to drive into Greenfield is pretty hazardous. I have to spend most of my time just swerving around some of the holes, which they don't fill fast enough. It's really a really rough year on paved surfaces.
Yeah,
Never worse than this.
and the holes are deeper. It
Yeah,
seems
yeah, I
they're
know.
like bowls instead of just a
Yeah.
hole.
That's progress. So I
Becky,
guess
have
we're done
we
this this week. Oh, sorry.
I just had one quick question. Have we started to charge Kristen's wages to that police chief's salary line?
I believe in this payroll. It's just starting.
Okay, got it. All right, so that's kicked in. Okay.
Yeah. So we should end up being all right.
Yeah.
As far as the budget goes. Yeah, she came to me too. She was getting very nervous.
But there's tons of money in there if we can transfer it out of the chief's line.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Gail said that, because we can go back to July 1 on her salary and transfer everything paid to her to that
Okay.
line. We need to.
Right.
So that's not going to end up being an issue.
I would think not.
Becky, I have a question. How does the money that the MLP has set aside for accounting, treasurer, auditor, things like this, how does that actually, where does that money go from us to those respective budgets?
It actually, I believe it goes into free cash. It doesn't go directly to those budget lines.
Wouldn't it be, couldn't we use those figures to deduct from the budgets that each of these departments put in? It just might lower our overall, I don't know.
I'll talk
Yeah, I
to
mean,
Neil-
I'm
I'll
afraid-
talk to Neil about it, but I believe the additional income has to go to free cash. But I'll talk to her and find out.
Yeah, is there no other way? I'm just curious if there's any other way to sort of see it. I'm sure that Shutesbury taxpayers and Shutesbury internet subscribers would love to see the budgets reduced, however slightly. I mean, we're talking about $1,000, $1,800 here, something like that. If we could actually pull down those amounts a little bit, then they would feel better about some things, perhaps.
I guess it also raises the issue of the fact that, they are doing additional work that they're not getting paid for. So so it's a complicated issue, Jim. I mean, then
Yeah, I kind of figured it was.
Yep. Paying it out directly to them. And I think that's part of the reason they didn't take it last year, because we hadn't calculated everything.
All right, so can we move on to the committee reports now? Or is it let somebody
I
else?
just want to ask a question about that. I mean, it sounds like the accounting would be an additional burden. It's an enterprise fund and it got added into the work. So I do want to make sure that the accountant and treasurer are getting, that we recognize that they're doing more work and they get paid for it in some way.
Thank you.
A more
Thank you.
specific connection, perhaps,
Yes.
that they would recognize. Yeah, I think that sounds good.
Okay. So we're done with the expense report unless somebody else has any comments or otherwise, then we'll go on to committee reports. Anyone want to report first here? George, you just made some small report. Do you have anything to add to that? Personnel?
Say that again?
You want to report for personnel? Personnel?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. My window's a little loud. The wind's banging.
I just asked if you had any other remarks about the personnel committee.
Oh, no, since the last meeting, we haven't met, so they haven't seen the COLA adjustment either. And like I said, we're looking at positions and we're going to make final decisions about any positions that we think are below market value and we might want to bump up by more than the 2.42%. But that's a meeting we're having Monday, and hopefully we can wrap everything up and be ready for Tuesday.
Good. Susie, with school committee or anything new or?
Not new. I went over stuff with Caitlin Sheridan, our new financial and operations person. I feel like she's worked hard to make sure the numbers are solid. I don't necessarily understand some of them, but it's she went through a process to separate out the ESSER and school choice positions, and I think going forward next year that it will be a little easier and clearer to compare the 2 years, because the numbers have been clarified and they weren't as clear to us in the past.
I wonder if you could ask them to give enrollment figures with their budget drafts. so that
Okay.
we can see that, how that might impact things and see how it has changing, what trends might be occurring.
Okay, I'll even look. It might be on their website. We can always look there first.
AJ, why don't you speak about capital planning? We're having a meeting.
On the second,
Yeah, I mean, right, March 2nd, I think that's the only new update. I think, Becky, can you remind me who's coming to that one, or which requests
we
we're
have
discussing?
new information on a Peterbilt from the highway department. Did he give that
Yeah,
to us
I said
already?
that.
No, he didn't have
We didn't
that.
have it last time. No.
So that's new. The police have gotten more information detailing the cruiser. And I think those are the two main ones. We don't know about the library, whether the grant is, we probably won't know by the 2nd.
Well, I've got a couple things from the building committee. Did a tour of, not all of, but many of the town buildings a couple weeks ago, and did that to do a quick, have a look at the buildings and see what we could observe in terms of the condition of the buildings, what might be coming up for future expenses to the town, and what work was evidently needed. And so we did look at the old town hall, the town hall, the old town hall, the Hearst House, the West Schoolhouse, and the elementary school. And so we spent quite a bit of time at the elementary school. Becky was there. And you can see that, there's a roof that's going to be done there in the near future. And looking at the exterior of the building, you can see some problems which we observed. And we're going to draw up a report of that and recommendations of the work that needs to be done and what we see as the proper sequence of the work, because some of it, it's important to do it in the right sequence to be most efficacious and not to create new work. So that's underway. We're going to have a meeting this week and discuss that further. One of the things that we're going to be discussing in building committee is also something we'll be discussing hopefully at the capital planning committee. I see that's been put on the agenda, which is engineering for the shingle part of the roof. That's phase 2 of the roof job. And so that's something that I wanted to mention to the finance committee because of the likelihood, or at least possibility, that town meeting will be put off till late May. I think it might be an idea that might be floated to you from capital planning and building committees and school committee would be perhaps to fund the engineering from the finance committee reserve. We're not asking for it now, but I think that's something we want to be talking about. It might be coming up down the road for finance committee consideration. The last thing I wanted to mention about the capital planning, and I don't know if this is the right context, AJ, but George mentioned the track, and I don't know if that's something that we should be discussing at capital planning or not, but I think maybe we should at least broach the subject of that track at capital planning.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's obviously a lot of information that the superintendent has promised to sort of report back on after collecting all of that feedback from the towns. So I think we should make the committee aware of kind of at least the broad discussion of the track. But I think until we hear back from the superintendent, seems like there's not anything specific enough for us to discuss.
Right.
But I think we should at least raise it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. So we'll do that at the upcoming meeting.
Yeah.
Becky,
Yes, since you brought up building committee, I want to report that the chimney is leaking. And if you were closer, if I might move this over here, you could hear it. I have
damn it.
paper towels down and I've been soaking up water. I've changed it about 4 times today.
Well,
This is the worst I've seen it in my building.
well,
but
that
chimney
goes back to
has been wet.
my analysis, which that chimney should be sealed. I did believe that. And Brian disagreed with me, of course, but I think we got to get that chimney sealed. Unfortunately, the guy that was doing it for me, the mason from Deerfield, he went out of business, so he retired. So I got to find somebody to go up there and put the sealer on that chimney. And I think that will solve that problem because we've done everything else. We repaired the flashing, we put on a cap. Now what remains is to seal the brick. So I think this hard driving east wind does penetrate the brick and get behind the flashing. That's too damn bad, but we'll get on that. Let's organize that at our meeting. And sorry about that. You don't have the chimney covered anyway. That's good.
It's covered. And the good thing is we left it exposed, so
Yeah,
I
exactly.
can buy it and clean it up as it happens.
Good thing is his job ain't done yet.
But at least I know it's there.
Exposed
not
brick is really nice, Becky. That's really nice.
Yeah.
In weather like this, my chimney leaks like a, yeah, this store we have right now is just not it is really, really hard on, on unsealed brick, which is a real problem. It's got to be done.
Yep, and
Right, Susie.
Susie has her hand up.
I would like, at some meeting to have someone explain to me what the Amherst Regional School is thinking about in their proposal in terms of the use of CPA money and how that played out. I read the chart. I had brain fog. I don't want to fight through it by myself. I hope the committee can help walk us through what that looks like, because it will impact how much money we think we would try to get from the CPA. And I did check with somebody, or maybe it was at a meeting. They will make a CPA request when they're ready to. So we'll know it a little bit there, but I would like a heads up on what that formula, the third, I just need some help understanding it.
I think we all do. There's a lot of moving parts in this proposal.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of variables,
We do have a lot of CPA money, 400,000, don't we? And isn't that going to kind of protect us against whatever plan they come up with the track?
The plan is 10 years over, it's like 150,000 a year. It's $1.3 million to Shutesbury.
Uh-huh.
And we only bring in 35 to 40,000 a year to CPA.
Mhm.
So, and you can't spend it all on one category. So if we
Sure,
spend
yeah.
2/3, even if we spend 300,000 and use the 40 grand every year and not have any other projects for 10 years, we'd still have to come up with what? At least 400,000 more or 5?
Wow.
Right. And we don't want to do that. We don't want to spend all our CPA money on the track in Amherst. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
pretty out of
Which
the
one-
question.
right.
Which we'll never use.
But all of those numbers were based on the assumption that the whole project would just be funded 100% by the four towns, and it was not that 30% proposal that they had spoken about earlier. So I don't think any of us should anticipate that that's a real number for Shutesbury right now, because I mean they're the ones that brought up without any feedback from any of the other towns, the concept that Amherst is going to have to pay a larger share of the cost for that project because it's an Amherst facility that'll be used by
Amherst residents.
Yeah, outside of school,
It's on
obviously
Amherst
outside of
property.
the school's use. Yeah. So I can't imagine that they're going to propose to not, kind of factor that in some significant way. But we've got to make sure. Yeah.
We got to get a proposal from AJ though.
Right, and we've got to, and if they do propose that, we've got to push back for sure. Yeah.
And hopefully also they can get a fundraising campaign going and
Yeah.
maybe defray, 10-20% of the cost would be great.
So what, Becky, go ahead.
I just want to throw out the information that when we accepted CPA, we did it at 1.5% instead of 3%. Our neighbors who did it at 3%, like Leverett and Pelham, they've got over $1 million and they have spent millions of dollars on projects. Money we never will receive because all those towns got 100% match.
They got in early.
No, it didn't matter that it was early. It mattered that it was at 3%. Pelham
Oh.
didn't get in until 8 years ago. But because they did it at a 1.5% more, they've made 2 to 3 times proportionately bang for the buck on their dollars.
But
I
that
just-
deal is no longer available, right, Becky?
It is available. I mean, if we move to 3%, we would be getting significantly more money. And yes,
wouldn't get
it would
100%.
be- I will research that so you know, but I think we could. I just want people to be aware of that, because that one in it, we're going to all the trouble, all the mechanics, all the extra billing work for Ellen, all of the, all of that. And we're only getting a tiny portion of what's possible. And if we could find a way to potentially offset, if we could find a way to reduce 1.5% somewhere else and add it there where we can get the money back, I don't know. But it's just noteworthy that we are not getting what most towns, a lot of our neighbors are getting on CPA.
I think that's a discussion for another time, because there's a lot more to that discussion about.
Oh, it's complicated, but I just wanted to throw it out there, because if we do get hit with this roof, if we could do it in a way that it uses half the CPA money, and we could continue to use it for town projects and still cover it, we would run the numbers, figure it out, but it is another potential source of additional revenue.
Aren't we having problems of finding projects to use some of this money that we've accumulated right now?
I wouldn't call it trouble with that. I think it's timing. When we need a project at the dam, we're going to need $500,000. So, a number of the projects other towns use their money for, we can't even consider, because we have so little money in the bank.
I suggest we put this on a agenda in the future, but I'd also like to begin, well, I guess we won't know until after Wednesday when the annual town meeting is, but I get very nervous about schedules. So I'm looking forward to knowing when that date is, and then doing the timeline for what we have to accomplish. We have a lot of expenses to figure out how we're gonna meet that.
Yeah, so it'd be good to know that date. And so, by the way, when is our next meeting going to be scheduled? Do we have one? Well, we have one Tuesday night, right? Select board meeting.
Right,
But your next one,
8th would be the 8th.
March 8th.
March 8th. Okay, same time, same place?
Mhm.
Sounds good. And yeah, town hall should be opening up after the next select board meeting again.
Really?
Wow. That's gonna feel weird.
Yeah. I don't know if we could ever see each other in the flesh again. That might be shocking.
So we won't be recorded anymore.
Oh, no, we'll still, we're not immediately switching to Zoom, because we have to figure out the policy. We only have we will be stuck having to have Zoom with an in-person meeting.
From having been through some of them, I would like to be able to not wear a mask, because being heard in a Zoom meeting when you're present is causing a conflict. And so I would like it to be at a point where everybody felt comfortable being in a room with the Zoom going on and not having to wear a mask.
I personally agree with you. I'd like to not have to wear a mask for 2 hours. I can't really stand it.
They can't hear you either on Zoom. So
Yeah.
But on the other hand,
Very
I don't want to be in a meeting if COVID numbers are still up. I don't want to be in a meeting and be at risk. of
Right,
catching-
this works pretty well for us. I mean, in all things considered.
Agreed. Let's stick
and
with
the
this.
governor said we can do this into July. Yeah.
Yes,
All right,
yes.
well,
Okay.
it
let's-
was
let's-
April, but
let's-
now it's July.
So, so we're good for Tuesday night, and so great. And the Celtics are playing well, George. You probably.
Oh my God, they're awesome. That Philly win was amazing.
That Detroit game stunk, though. Come on.
Yeah, that's okay. They were coming off
Jim
the
is
high. of
not a
beating Philly.
Celtic fan.
Oh, you got to watch them the next 2 months, Becky. Celtics are
What,
the,
are they on tonight?
Yeah, they're on
Thursday.
Thursday night, but it's on TNT, that I don't get. So anyway,
they look
great.
good.
So Tuesday night, and Becky, we're meeting Thursday on the building committee, and Monday is cops, and then Tuesday is capital planning, and Wednesday, or whatever, on it goes. So
Yep.
For chairing, Bob, I move that we adjourn.
I
second
seconded.
Second.
Robinette side.
Right there, I.
Groves, aye.
Hemingway, I.
Cashew, eye.
Mosher, aye.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Arrivederci.
Good night,
Bye.
everyone.
Good night.
There, good night.
So Becky, send me a resume.
I will do that now before I go.
So, and can you give me a little context?